Good? Audio's good? Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Stars, our screening of the Free Initiative's mini documentary films. We're going to make some people superstars tonight. My name is Ian Rowe, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. I study the factors that drive upward mobility. And I also lead the Free Initiative, and we seek to make it more possible for children of all backgrounds to achieve the American dream by embracing the pillars of family, religion, education, and entrepreneurship. As you will soon see and hear, tonight is about storytelling, about how to help young people overcome adversity and lead self-determined lives of virtue with gratitude and a sense of how to lead their life with agency. We all know the power of stories in our lives, from the books we were read to as children, to our parents' stories, to the stories we share with others about our own lives. Storytelling is a powerful way of engaging with others, ourselves, and the world. Stories teach us lessons about what it means to be human, who we are, and what we are made for. Stories inspire us to pursue meaning and purpose. Stories have real and imagined characters who face obstacles and overcome them and grow in that process. And we learn to see ourselves in that same or better light. Tonight, you will hear 4 of these stories. This should be a fun evening. I see some folks already have popcorn, which is great. It should be a fun evening as we are showcasing 4 mini documentaries that highlight each of the elements of the Free Initiative, my framework around the 4 pillars of human flourishing. Each of our stars tonight is going to speak not about being victims of circumstance, not about how they pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, but rather about how each pillar played a role in transforming the direction of their lives. Alexis and Justin Black, there you go. Will speak about the idea that family does not necessarily mean the family that you're from. Rather, it is the family that you are on the pathway to form in the future. Pastor Alton Hardy and Dion Watts will speak about the importance of faith and the power of having a personal and religious faith commitment in one's own life. The third mini documentary on education is about me. No. That was not a call for applause, but it's both about ensuring young people take ownership of their own learning while also giving more families the power of choice and the ability to select the education that works best for their child. And then finally, Lizette and her husband, Oscar Valle, who unfortunately cannot be with us this evening, you will see their inspiring story about entrepreneurship and starting a school in Los Angeles. After we watch each of the 4 mini documentaries, you will then get a chance to hear from Alexis, Justin, Pastor Hardy, and Dion, and me, and I think we'll have a great panel conversation. So with that, please enjoy your popcorn, and please enjoy the free mini documentaries. Thank you very much. All right.
We have every justification to live the life that people assume that we would have, to be drugged out, to be pregnant at 15, or to be, all these things we're completely justified in doing because of what we've experienced, but we chose not to live that life. We chose not to be in those statistics that people told us that we would be in.
Even though we've been through some pretty crazy things, it's unfortunately not unique. It's just not talked about.
It's what we've done with it that makes it unique. I lost my biological mother to suicide when I was 6 years old. And at that point, I went and lived with my biological father. For 8 years, he was physically, sexually, and emotionally abusive. I was used to being degraded every day, all day, being called every name you could possibly think of, literally being forced to kiss somebody's feet on my knees, begging, screaming, crying for somebody to love me. I mean, you can't describe that pain and that hurt. During this time, I felt trapped. I completely thought that there was no way out of the situation and what I was going through unless I found a way to relieve myself from the pain and the misery that I was experiencing. And that, to me, logically, was through committing suicide. I had tried it multiple times. This is something generational in my family. My biological mother committed suicide and her mother. I would tell myself, I can't go outside. I can't be with friends. I can't do anything because I'm not worthy of it and I deserve this. Sorry.
Don't apologize. You good. Give me a second, sweetheart.
Yeah.
As a 9-year-old, my family and I live in an abandoned house. We literally piled up clothes to sleep on to avoid wood and sharp nails on the floor. No electricity, no heat in the house. We took a bucket, scooped up snow, wait for it to melt to use as makeshift showers. Even as a child, dealing with like bullying and attacks because we couldn't afford new clothes. So I went to school with shoes, no socks, or holes in my pants. My dad was selling drugs at the time. Some of these kids lived in my same neighborhood and they saw the drug abuse in my household. So, they saw my mom abusing drugs and they made fun of me for that. And that really started to internalize that and really produced a lot of anger in me, fighting in school. Things got so bad, Child Protective Services eventually found us. My mom said, we don't have a choice but to let you go into the foster care system. I felt let down, and I felt that if I couldn't trust the promises of my parents, then who could I ever trust in my life?
Unfortunately, so much of our definition of like love and trust and community comes from people who didn't deserve to give that definition to us in the first place. And so we're operating the rest of our lives as adults, healing from our childhood with definitions of things from people that didn't deserve to give me that definition of love and commitment and trust. And a subconscious inner voice that we have is almost always our parents' voice. But when I met my adoptive family, Kim and Brian, when I met them at 17, that 100% changed the trajectory of my life. Through seeing their love for each other, their love, their commitment, and how they parent, I see myself, this is how I could parent. This is how I could love, how I could receive it. But it took a solid 4 or 5 years of knowing them because I thought to myself, they must have done something to make God love them more. Then I don't deserve that. I can never get that. And so no matter how much they loved on me, poured into me, I wasn't in a season of life that I could receive that. But that didn't stop them from continuing to plant that seed in me and seeing that for me. And I remember thinking, my God, how would my life have been different if I had that sooner? Just a parent to protect me and love me. But now I'm able to appreciate and love Justin because I've received that, in my parents now. These ideas that were planted in my head, my words aren't important. My words, my story, all of that, they don't matter. And so much of that did come from with my biological father speaking so many of those lies to me. It really was taking a hold over my life.
From the time that you came to us in the summer of 2011 to 5-6 years ago, you just changed so much in that. Not only that you're going to achieve, but you're also going to start thinking about others. And it's not just about yourself. And you're going to start realizing, this world's a better place when you put others first. And that's a way to live.
You've grown in generosity and compassion, and it's just awesome having a seat watching your growth.
And by the time you were 26, we'd already told you we're keeping Justin, whatever you're saying.
And I told them that you would say that. I knew it.
Yeah, y'all all right. Y'all cool people. Entering into college, I'm like, I'm doing whatever I have to do to make friends. Because that fear of loneliness throughout high school really hurt me for a long time. I was coming from a group home where I was trying to find myself, understand who I was. When I met Alexis, she started to pull at my heart a lot.
I think it was like the second or third day after we met. I just remember him just grabbing my hand and saying, I would just love to continue to get to know you. I think that you're a beautiful person and, you didn't deserve any of those things that you went through. When I think of like where I came from and the relationships that I had, I have never experienced love in that sense. I always believed that love hurts because I just knew only pain.
She pulled out a sense of authenticity in me and really allowed me to put aside everything that I thought I wanted to be. We needed each other, but we needed to support each other in our healing individually, and then we needed to come together and create something new.
Oh, wow, you can
Amanda's got her in here.
When kids succeed coming out of challenging situations, it's usually been that they've had an experience or an embrace of some key institutions. Most notably, forming a strong family. Not necessarily coming from a strong family, but forming a strong family in their own life. But we have to ensure that they know how to embrace these institutions in such a way they can really now achieve the things that they want to achieve in their own lives.
Joining me today is Justin and Alexis Black.
The book is Redefining Normal.
Justin and Alexis Black, Redefining Normal. If you have not read this book, it must be on your bookshelf and read it.
The things that they've experienced in their childhood, experiences that they had in college, growing up, they made a decision that they didn't want that to be their normal. So they took it upon themselves to redefine their normal.
For me growing up, my dad, calling me a burden and all these harmful words that I heard and received when I was a child. There was so much work that needed to be done and really go through that process of changing the way I thought about myself.
We're defining what love looks like for our daughter. I had been told for years that I have too much baggage, there's too many things wrong with me, nobody will love me.
We always thought that, we wouldn't be good enough to be parents. We weren't deserving of being parents because of who we were, what we were going through. When you are down and not feeling good about yourself, you need to be around people who are contributing to you, who are helping you out. We want to influence people to identify that generational trauma and the practices and habits that go into creating generational success.
But see, I remember Fairfield that had more vibrancy, that had more commerce, business, and families. And it's deteriorated over time. Just hopefully I don't pick up a nail driving through here. You got all these overgrown yards and torn up houses. And there are people still in these communities, but the family structure in these communities is just completely obliterated.
Breaking news this morning ends with a suspect in custody after the
violent 48 hours in central Alabama, ending with a mass shooting in Fairfield last night. 5 people shot in a drive-by.
Multiple investigations after a deadly night in Birmingham. 2 shootings killed 3 people.
Hundreds of people gathered at Fairfield High School football game, scattering after shots were fired from a vacant house nearby.
There's a lot of poverty and a lot of broken families in my community. I would go to sleep constantly hearing gunshots. I didn't have much money in our family growing up. We kind of lived paycheck to paycheck. My mom was just trying to survive. My mom was just trying to put food on the table, so she had to work a lot. My father was not present. My grandfather had already passed, and my great-grandfather had already passed before I was born. So I didn't have any direct men in my life. From an early age, I just didn't have guidance on what it looked like to be a man.
I met a young man, he was broken, fatherless, impoverished, both physical and spiritual.
I've slept on cots, I've slept on couches, my friend's mother's couch. I've slept and lived in the projects. I was shown that the opportunities to find success were gonna be in the gangs, in the street life, in the drug dealing. By the grace of God, I realized that education was gonna be my way out. I was able to graduate high school as my salutatorian. I was able to graduate college. The young men in our community don't see that often.
They may not even see their dads. Most of the time, they don't even know who they are, and they are drowning in a sea of hopelessness.
When a young boy does not have a man in his home setting the example of what a man is supposed to be, they're gonna look for the influence somewhere. Now, they're gonna get that influence from somewhere, regardless.
These guys are very transient. They're in and out. Their phones go off the next day. They're in prison, they're dead, they're shot, they're killed, or murdered. They got kids being born. They're not ready for it. It's just a lot of stuff coming.
And a lot of people are just throwing up their hands and saying, what do we do? How do we address this? How do we stop this?
This is vitally important because you're in a culture. And I say as a pastor, so I'm preaching, how do we break this? How do we stop the violence in our communities? And I tell people, look at the research. The research is just there. It's not hidden from us. Why are all the kids that are dying coming from a certain kind of home? They're fatherless. So you just got brokenness on top of brokenness, which leads to more brokenness. But you know what? I've done too many funerals. I want to do more weddings than I do funerals. How about changing that? And I've been asking God to do that. I said, God, please. Please, God, please. I don't have to see a lot. Demonstrate just for a moment a sense of I'm someone and I'm loved by a holy God, and that I don't have to die at 19. And Dion has gone through a lot of pain in his life, and I think he learned that by experience, that let's start with the basics. What does it look like to do it God's way?
I had to figure out a lot on my own during those times when I was the most lonely, was when I experienced God's presence the deepest. I just felt empty. I just felt lost. I just felt that I didn't know what to do going forward. And when I met Pastor Alton, he was able to articulate something in regards to the victimhood narrative, in regards to the system holding you back, and how that wasn't a reality, and that didn't have to be a reality. And that caused me to go deeper into my relationship with God, and I began to care about things that I didn't care about in the past. I began to care about building a community on marriage and family submitted to God and God's design for flourishing. I began to care about contributing to hope and contributing to helping where I can.
Every young person has free will, the ability to make decisions. But how is that free will exercised in such a way that it's for the betterment of their own life or for that of their community? Young people can't do that alone. Especially for kids who are growing up in communities where they're not seeing great examples of strong families, where they're not seeing how a faith community can mobilize to support them, or if they don't have access to great schools. And that's why I stress the importance of these institutions playing a role in the lives of our kids. Agency is individually practiced, but socially empowered.
And this is why you don't really know how people are watching you, watching your life, your marriage. And these young men, such as Dion, get to see more healing than what I ever could have even imagined. And I keep telling Dion, he's next up, and he's growing really fast. He's good.
We have been made by God, and for his own glory. Knowing that should give you a sense of dignity, value. You are worth something. We're trying to bring the realization of hope to this community and to people who have been beaten down, people who have been lied to, but with the systems and the structures of this world and the other people in this world, and they don't know who they are.
Now at Urban Hope Community Church, I have the opportunity to disciple, to invest in the lives of men from a variety of ages and give them hope for the future. Despite where you start and despite the obstacles that you may be born into, they can be overcome.
It's vitally important for anyone to understand in regards to bringing hope into people's lives. No matter where they're from, no matter what they've been through, no matter what they've experienced, no matter what family dynamic and background that they're from, we have dignity and value and worth.
There are many, many schools that make the assumption that based on a kid's race or their income level, that they are inherently marginalized or oppressed or disenfranchised. We don't believe any of those things. Vertex Partnership Academies is a public charter school located in the Soundview section of the Bronx. It's a wonderful community, and yet only 7% of kids graduate from high school ready for college. Unfortunately, that situation exists in the Bronx, Los Angeles, Chicago, Denver, many areas across the country. And the challenge is, fundamentally, not enough kids have access to a high-quality education. So we were determined to build a great school as hopefully a model that can exist anywhere in the country. Because our kids deserve the right to choose a great education.
My family is from Trinidad, but I'm from like a small little city called Belize. My mom brought me here and she was trying to look for a school that fit her standards. I came here for like a week or two and I fell in love. I'm like, Mom, I'm staying.
I just want to do like something that I know I'm gonna end up enjoying, not something that I feel obligated to do by everyone else. If I was in a regular school, it wouldn't be as challenging for me, so I really had to like get it together to stay on top of like your work and remain disciplined.
Our kids are entering what we call the life-defining decade of age 14 to 24, where the decisions that you make during that period of time have huge influence over the rest of your life. So we actually have a class called Pathways to Power. And ultimately, it's about life decision-making. One of the things we teach is something called the success sequence.
I want you to imagine there's a sequence of steps that'll almost guarantee you, right, lead a life of fulfillment, one of purpose, achievement, and success, right, how you define it. It's not something that's in some ancient artifacts, right, that we find underground. It's not something that's only available to the rich, the famous. It's something that's available for all of us, and it's important to learn here as ninth graders so that we can set ourselves up for success in the future.
The first decision I made around Vertex was the idea that we were going to organize this school around the 4 cardinal virtues: courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom.
The biggest one is temperance, especially at the high school level. So I lead my life with self-discipline because I am responsible for my learning and my behavior.
If you're running a school, you are in the business of moral formation.
Vertex encourages us to see what paths align with our interests and our strengths.
Our students can choose either what's called a diploma pathway or the careers pathway. The diploma pathway prepares you to enter any college or university in the world, or the careers program where you have the opportunity to specialize in a particular industry.
Now that I'm a sophomore, I chose the diploma program because once you go through with it, you get like way more options for college.
What are some of the steps that you need to take now, in 5 years, in 10 years, so that you create that dream life that you've envisioned? Completing at least high school, gain full-time employment, a job, waiting until marriage in order to have children. Following these 3 steps is a path to success in your future.
In my own experience, I talk to students about when I was young. I had a fantastic public education where I had a sense that I could basically do whatever I wanted to do because I was inspired by teachers who really believed in my capacity to achieve.
They're very caring, the staff here at Vertex. They teach you how to stay on track and they help you with whatever you need.
Something that surprised me was how nice the teachers were. They really listen to us when we need help.
My parents instilled in me this idea that I'm not some helpless being on this earth. You know, I have power, I have agency. So it was really important for me to actually run a school. And not just a school anywhere, but a school in a community where oftentimes people say, well, these folks are just victims or they don't have agency. And so that's what we've done.
Discipline is me doing what I must do, regardless of how I feel.
I think it's really easy for teenagers to worry about like what's in their little bubble and about just checking off the boxes, going to classes, doing what they need to do. I've seen that because of systems and structures that we have in place at the school, or because of the conversations that we have with students, they want to have relationships with each other. They look out for one another. They hold each other accountable. And it's been really gratifying to see.
One would think launching a great school is heavily embraced, and it's really hard. There's a reason the status quo of schools that are not delivering high results for kids exist. We wanted to build a culture of agency and urgency. But ultimately, I want to change the national conversation of inherent victimhood to inherent triumph. We want to make it possible for every student to have multiple pathways to individual success. You have to stand for something. You have to determine what is your enduring impact. With a strong family, strong education, strong faith, you could do great things.
Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. It matters not how straight the gate, but how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Great. Yes!
When you are a child that was conceived through an assault, the question is ever present, do I matter? Do I deserve to take up space? Will I ever be good enough? In the moment, pain never feels welcomed. It isn't whether or not you're going to face hardship, it's about your response to that hardship. Choosing an entrepreneurial lifestyle is not very common because it's a leap of faith.
What's up, beautiful people? You are listening to K108 in El Monte, California. It's a beautiful day out, so go enjoy it.
I don't know if it's necessarily common for people to have an I can attitude. I am a Latina, and we have a saying that's very common though, and it's si se puede. We live in possibility. I live in this space of anything can happen. I worked at multiple schools in the Los Angeles area, and I saw this problem over and over again. Not every student is going to be set up to go to a conventional schooling environment, and that's okay. Being an inclusive, equitable, and accessible micro school is something that I set out to do at the very beginning of my entrepreneurship journey. My grandma owned her own business in Los Angeles for over 35 years. And seeing her do that opened up my eyes to the possibility of having my own business. My mom has been one of the people that has inspired me the most. She is an incredibly strong woman. She's inspired me to do my own part.
I'm glad you got the pictures out, Lisa.
I know, me too. I haven't seen them in forever. Okay, let's see.
This is Mari's baby shower, and you organized it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're so talented.
Has Lizette always been a driven person?
Yes. I think my mom, being an entrepreneur herself, She was a good example.
Oh, this is good. This is in the backyard. That was right before we started our lemonade stand.
You already had good ideas to get into business.
So you were entrepreneurial since you were a little kid.
Yes, absolutely. The entrepreneurial spirit right here. Growing up in Almani in the 90s, I don't think that most kids thought that entrepreneurship was a viable option. There was always this concern about gang activity. There was a lot of drugs. There was a lot of abortions happening. And once I found out my origin story, I always thought that I had monster's blood running through my veins. Because the way that I was conceived, it was through sexual assault. I always questioned, where's my dad? Why don't I have a dad? I was really, really struggling to find my place, trying to figure out where I belonged. My grandma and my mom, they did their very best to cocoon me, to shield me. However, the trauma was already there. But growing up, I knew that I did not want to be whatever statistic I was supposed to be. I was not going to follow in the footsteps of those who went before me in a negative way. The blood that's running through my veins does not dictate my future. And that is how I have lived my life. I want to live in a life-giving, intentional manner, and that's exactly what I have pursued.
The moral of her story is perseverance and grit and tenacity, faithfulness to the calling that she has in her life. She's never given up once. And whenever she has a vision to pursue something new, nothing stops her.
My life has been marked with so many incredible moments of deep transformation, and how that manifests oftentimes is through creating new spaces, healing spaces, physical spaces. And one of those areas was the renovation of an RV that my husband and I undertook. We used it for family trips, and we used it with our micro-schooling students, and then eventually we sold it to a single mom and her daughter, and they're currently road schooling. I was able to write a bilingual children's book, and I think delving into all of these different entrepreneurial endeavors has really opened my eyes to see how can I contribute to the world.
The thing that makes a difference for a young person is what I call the sense of personal agency. They have this belief that they can lead a self-determined life. And in my experience, if they've been able to form a strong family, be part of a strong faith community, and have strong access to education, that has usually led to some kind of entrepreneurial mindset where they have a problem-solving mentality or approach to their own life.
I've never met anybody with such a vision of all things being possible. Her story has been a story of just resilience, and in that resilience, taking it for what it is and just knowing what God has for her and being able to see there's something better.
The hardships have served as the greatest catalyst for me to accomplish so many of my goals. And I think that's the most beautiful part, that in the midst of the breaking, there is a molding and a reshaping. And we see this in nature all the time. We see this pruning and this dying and then this rebirth. Because of that pain, that suffering, there is this demand for beauty to be birthed.
I'm very proud of you, Lisette. Not only as a wife, as a mother, as a teacher, not only you're a person of faith, but you apply it in everything that you do. And that makes me very proud. I love you.
I love you more. You may not know that you want to be an entrepreneur. I certainly did not know. But we need how you see the world and we need your perspective, because that perspective will then touch someone else that your neighbor will not be able to reach. You have been given a sphere of influence, whether you know it or not. Your origin story is a part of your story, but it's not your whole story. And fusing the entrepreneurial spirit with your unique talents and giftings is magic, because there's no one else that is going to be able to show up in this world the way that you can. And you can begin that journey by asking yourself two simple questions. What problem do I see in the world? And what solution can I create to fix that problem?
Okay. I think lights up. Alexis, Justin, Alton, come on up. Weren't those great? Those were great, right? Those four mini documentaries are now going to be made part of the free curriculum that we have about 22 fellows here who are part of the inaugural class. I want to just a round of applause when you stand up, the fellows. These fellows actually will be implementing this curriculum, inclusive of these four videos, this year as we gain input to distribute these videos and curriculum more broadly in the 26-27 school year. So a round of applause for the fellows. So let me start with Alexis and Justin. I wanted to have your beautiful daughter.
I think she's sad that we came up here.
What's that?
Her.
Oh no!
I actually
oh,
think
no.
that's why she's crying.
Oh no! Well, I just wanted to start there because obviously, both of you just have an incredible story, your origin story, and yet here you are now with a beautiful daughter. And I want to give you an opportunity to reflect on the role that family has played in your life. We often say it's not about the family that you're from, it's about the family that you're on the pathway to form. Why do you think that message is so important to young people who are in tough situations and are trying to figure out a different path for themselves?
Yeah, first, thank you for that question, Ian, and just thank you for just the entire process of allowing us to be a part of Free. And to the question of why does this idea of, the family we're from, why does it impact us so much in trying to create a new sense of family? I think a large part of it goes to the idea of just so many broken wounds and things that we've carried over into our lives as adults. And so much of it is the brokenness that we just can't seem to wrestle with, that we can't seem to understand these past experiences and the things that our family has either done to us, the environment. It's not a part of our identity and a part of our future. And it's unfortunate that, so much of these experiences in our childhood is taken on as sometimes even our fault, and we take it as our responsibility because it happened to us. And so for us, it was so much of this healing process went into forgiveness and understanding that while the environments we grew up in may not have been our fault, it was something that we needed to forgive our family and parents for, because it was something that was generational and normalized. And so going through that process helped us understand just how we can give grace as we receive grace in our healing journey and try to create something new for ourselves and for our daughter we have now.
Yeah. And Alexis, what was the moment when you realized that things could be different in your life?
Yeah, I would say it was definitely when I met my adoptive parents. At the time, they were my foster parents. They were for about 10 years. I actually was adopted at 26, which is quite different from most people, I would say. That was a journey in itself. But really, I would say it was when I met them and when they were people that walked in their faith. Like, I could trust their words. I could trust who they said that they were. Because I think individuals who have gone through a lot of trauma, they tend to be hypervigilant and just can't really trust those around them. And they really showed me that I can put my walls down, that I can love, that I can observe what it is to be a wife, a mother, a daughter, all the things that my parents have shown me. And it is crazy because I only lived with them for 6 months before they moved. And I actually moved in with their parents so that I could finish high school at the same high school, because I had gone to 10 schools at that point, and they wanted to make sure that I was able to graduate. And so my grandparents, they took me in, and just seeing that kind of wrap around what family could be, it was just something I never experienced. And I love that my daughter gets to experience, family in a very different way than I have been.
Wow, that is it's beautiful. So Pastor Alton and Dion, that your documentary, paints a pretty tough picture of the community that you're in, and yet you were able to harness an energy in your faith. What is it that allows you to see those conditions differently? Or what is it about your faith that encourages you to see a sense of possibility where others might seem, this is hopeless, but you're rallying people to a different vision for their lives? Both of you first.
Victimhood, for me personally, it was bankrupt. It had no, you can't be a victim and a hope person at the same time. Those are two different energies. And so when you live in the world of victimhood, as I did for many years, and walking with God, and finally, I think the God of the Bible, I like to say that way, finally broke through my paradigm that I had in my mind about me being Black, African-American, poor, and all of the above, and just focusing on who God was. And then I just, by faith, I think faith is hope for the future. Something can change. And I just grabbed a hold to it and pretty much just put my hand over my ears, and I just stopped listening to all the victimization theology that was coming from everywhere, airways, TV, music, and just started to spend more time with the God of hope.
What was the message? You're an African American man. What was it that you were hearing?
Well, in African American culture, I can't speak for all, so I don't want to generalize, but there's this boogeyman. The boogeyman is always, it's the white guy somewhere. There's God, but then there's him pulling the strings, and so you can't do it. There's a glass ceiling. You can't overcome, especially in these urban poor communities, because the reason that they exist is because supposedly white man and slavery, Jim Crow, and all of that has caused it to be. And so if you just stay with that, then how do you change that? I mean, I'm not God. I don't know how to change people like that. And so you just hear that over and over, and pretty much all the conversations I go into now, that's typically what comes up in the room, the racialized injustice of the past, which I don't deny, but what do you do with that at the end of the day? It takes agency away from you because you were putting it on them, and so you really can't overcome anything because it's really someone else that has to change before you can do anything on your own. So I just had to just say no to that, and then just grab a hold of hope and the God of hope, and that's where has led me to where I am today.
Wow. Dion, in the mini doc, we see you pictured speaking to a young man, playing football. What are you telling him about his life? What are you telling him about, I don't know his circumstance, but what are you sharing with him about what he can do?
Well, that with God, all things are possible. That you don't have to be a victim. In Christ, we are victorious. And as Pastor Alton said, that you can't be a victim and a victor at the same time. And I've been there. I'm sharing my life story. I mean, what you saw there is discipleship. It's where it's life on life. And what God has done in my life, I want to give that away to other young men. And so my life is no longer about me. It's about others. And more importantly, it's about Christ and pointing others to Christ. And so I live now with an eternal perspective, and I'm trying to pass that perspective on to others, because most people are living for this life. Most people are chasing fame and fortune and what they can receive in this life. And by the grace of God, I've come to understand that there's no real hope and joy in that. And now I live my life for the next life. And that there's freedom in that, because I'm not chasing after the things of the world anymore. And so I try to impart that upon other young men and enable them, hopefully by the grace of God, to see that there are rewards beyond this life. But in this life, we're not promised that. Actually, Jesus says that you have trouble in this life, but he's overcome it. And so that's what I try to impart to other young men. And in living in obedience to Christ through the scriptures, there is a measure of flourishing in this life, but still the hope is not in this life, it's in what's to come.
Wow. And but the great news is that you now have a new partner in this life.
Yes, I do.
Again, beautiful that you've now married, children.
Yes, 2 children.
What's that like? Could you have envisioned this 10 years ago?
No, I mean, it's, and the thing about it that you don't see in the documentary, I went through a divorce. And so I grew up fatherless. And so, and in the divorce that I went through, it was an extra measure of betrayal, because I already had felt that I had been betrayed by my father and rejected by my father. And then after I've come to faith, I get rejected by my wife. And so the identity piece that's an overlap in all of these stories of struggling with identity, am I worth something? Like, why don't people like me? Why don't people want to be around me? Why don't people want to love me? And then, but it's in God and in Christ that I have found a love that is incomparable to any human love. And so it's transcendent. It's a transcendent love. And so that is just completely transformed my life. And I've seen what God has given me in holding on to my faith through the hard times, not rejecting God and being angry at God because of the things that I've experienced, but rather pressing into my relationship with him. And as I said in the documentary, those times, those darkest times of my deepest pain have been the times that God has shown up the most, and I felt his presence the deepest. And that enables me to continue to press on and follow him rather than reject him because of the pain that I've gone through.
Yeah, wow. Alexis and Justin, you've decided to take your story and your experiences on the road with redefining normal. Talk a little bit about that. Why are you calling your initiative Redefining Normal, and what do you see that growing into in terms of impacting young people?
You may tackle it? Yeah. So the concept of redefining normal goes into a little bit of what I touched on before around so much of our history is unhealthy practices and habits, maybe by your mother, father, your parents in a household, or maybe your great-great-great-grandparents. And a lot of times we build somewhat of a spiritual, mental, emotional household on the unhealthy practices and habits. And in a spiritual sense, some may call it generational sin. And with the generational trauma, generational sin that many of us have gone through generations before, it's passed down, it goes unaddressed and unresolved, and passed down in a sense of some people see as culture, what some people see as their identity, and it kind of becomes the household standard where it even starts to conflict with either healthier practices and habits, to where in a lot of communities, if you are seen trying to do something healthier, doing something different is looked down upon. And so redefining normal combats the generational trauma that many of us have gone through and normalized, and works to create generational success. So collaborating with university programs like our university that we graduated from at Western Michigan, the Cedar Scholars Program for foster youth and higher education, we partner with programs like that or different nonprofits to have workshops and build curriculum around what does it look like to combat generational trauma and work to create generational success. And so that goes into family structures and dynamics, healthy relationships, and so many other components that impact our future. And so the Free Initiative and so much of these conversations is intertwined with what the Redefining Normal stands for and what it means. And at the foundation is a faith-based component that we shouldn't conform to the ways of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And that we are made in the image of God. And so that's how we are meant to operate. But so much of the world and the cultures and practices of the world has kind of taken us from our true identities and who we're meant to be, and has taken us from that to practicing things that are not conducive for our lives and the next generation. So.
Yeah. And I would say also, kind of piggyback off that, it didn't start as a business or even wanting to write a book for other people. It really was knowing that both of us came from foster care and knowing the divorce statistics and all the other statistics that we're kind of battling. It was, how do we make sure that we're set up for success going into marriage? And so it was kind of crazy that we were both in South Africa and then we're emergency evacuated, quarantined, and we're like, what do we do during COVID? And this was the time to write a book. Why not? And so we decided to really just more or less write it as a way to make sure that everything's on the table for the both of us, that we know everything about each other going into marriage, so that it wasn't kind of a surprise afterwards, knowing how kind of a lot of the compounded trauma that we did have. And then we realized, well, initially we wanted the book to be about healthy relationships. Then we quickly realized, well, if you want to understand healthy relationships, you had to understand what is your normal and how did we define normal from our families. And I'm from Flint, Michigan, and he's from Detroit, Michigan. And so we had kind of crazy, a lot of overlaps of what we thought was healthy and normal, and how do we redefine that. And so we wanted to be able to support other people in going through that journey as well.
Pastor and Dion, so you have a lot of educators in the room, and these topics are very sensitive, particularly around family and faith. What would you like schools to be doing, or what would you like educators to be doing, particularly around issues of faith, to help more young people understand the possibility that exists within having a personal faith commitment, especially when it seems we're at a time where religiosity is actually down amongst young people? How can schools, do you think, play a role in assisting there?
That's a great question. I think really understanding that humans, whether they're secular in their worldview, but there is something divine about human beings. Just acknowledging that. Then secondly, I think allowing for, in their area, if I was running a school, finding pastors, churches who really, what I would call, have a real good understanding of walking alongside of people beyond just the kind of giveaways, handouts, but really, as Dion talked about, focusing on discipleship, walking people into what I call being a true human in God's identity. And just, I would invite pastors and churches into my school if they were in the area. And then I think thirdly, just know that we talk about it here at AEI, I'm a marriage guy in our communities until we showed up as a church. you didn't see a whole lot of weddings. No one even talked about it. It was almost like we would ask the kids in the schools, like, well, who is it that gets married? And the kids would reply, this is high school kids, but they said white people over in Birmingham, people over the mountain. They would see rings, they're like, what is this? Why are you wearing this? This is just foreign things for people, I guess. And what I think a lot of schools and teachers and people really don't understand, I don't think they really understand how the role of the church in some of these social impediments that we're all seeing in our schools, especially urban schools. I think they don't understand that when you do the research, and there's people who attend church tend to do better in school, tend to just be better people. I'm not saying that everybody goes to church, it's don't want to make that mistake. But there is a healthiness that comes out of it. And so I think I would be trying to get people back into church in that way and getting them in some kind of what I call spiritual discipleship, getting them to connect to this free ideal. Even if they don't really understand it, but getting them to connect that you're not just a physical being, you're a spiritual being, and that there's someone who loves you, cares more about you than what you can ever even imagine, and that's God. And so I would come at it from that angle. That's what we're trying to do in Birmingham and Fairfield, where we're at as a local church.
Yeah, you want to take that?
Yeah, I was an educator, fresh out of college, taught in the classroom for my first 2 years after undergrad. And one of the great challenges, even though I was teaching at a Christian school, was I just inherently, and just what I observed with my students, knew that even as we were teaching Bible and we were having them go to chapel, we were facing something that was very deep. And primarily, I was having a hard time coming against what was being taught and modeled at home. And so I realized early on, man, like the classroom is important, don't get me wrong. I shared that in my story, how school was a vehicle for me. But as I ministered or taught those kids, I realized we have to get to the homes. And through the research that I've seen and just some of my own upbringing, I know how important particularly fathers are in the homes when it comes to faith transformation. And so you want to have a church and a community that can support people so that they can live in the way that God has intended them to live. They can parent in the way that God has intended for them to parent. And so coming alongside healthy Bible-believing churches and trying to not just reach the kids, but somehow figure out how do we reach their home, their parents. And that takes a lot of creativity, and it takes a lot of work and sacrifice beyond the normal school hours. And so you need extra support outside of the school in order to be able to do that. And that's where the church comes in.
Yeah, and you need a lot of trust to have those relationships.
That's right.
In the documentary on entrepreneurship, Oscar and Lizette talked about this idea of when breaking happens, but there's a simultaneous like remolding and reshaping. I thought that was very powerful. And she said it happens in nature all the time. She was pruning, but there's rebirth. Mm-hmm. Can each of you four talk about that concept of, in those darkest moments, that there's actually an opportunity for growth and rebirth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it's so much that happens to, I think, many of us. I think most of us are called to, are we going to bow down or just give in tough moments, or are we going to try to figure out a way to get out of this, right? And so, think about if you are in a dark place, if you're, stuck in a dark cave or in a hole or something. All right, what can I build to get me out of this? What can I create? What can I do? And I think that's where even most of our creativity comes from, in dark places or trying to figure things out. And how many things in the 21st century have we created because there was a problem or a sickness or illness in the world that we needed to combat? And so even for us, we wrote Redefining Normal, as Alexis mentioned, during COVID and during a time where, I graduated college in 2020, a perfect time to graduate college and figure out life, right? And so it was so much to figure out in this time, and to become an entrepreneur in one of a difficult season as an adult was just such a blessing. But I always look at, dark times and difficult times now as what is it trying to teach me? What is God trying to teach me right now? How is God trying to shape me into becoming a better person, husband, father, whatever it may be? And what can I create right now? Because, as I mentioned, so much creativity comes from these dark moments. What am I called to create, and would I allow myself to give in to the circumstances? And I think, as mentioned, it's so easy to become a victim in those dark moments. It's so easy to just say, is this person's fault? Is that person's fault? Even to go back and blame my parents, and like, if they would have, created a better life for me 20 something years ago, then I would be in this situation. It's so easy and almost natural to try to go back to that. But living in the right now, what is the small thing I can do? And even it's just the first step, right? And not even thinking of the big scheme of how am I gonna figure this out, but like, what is the first step I can do in this situation? And I credit books like Ecclesiastes, of a book of wisdom in the Bible, around what in my immediate situation, in my plot, that it says, what can I figure out in my plot, in my situation of my surroundings? What can I do to just take that first step that's in my control? And I think that helps a lot with just trying to figure out how we can get out of these dark moments and situations.
Yeah.
I would say for me and Dion, I just long for a biblical, sound church to be planted among the urban poor. And we ended up in Fairfield, where we are. And I wanted to see mothers married to men pushing baby strollers and in the inner city. And before we got there, none of that was happening. I wanted to see house ownership. I wanted to see flourishing in regular communities, like even where we're at, just shops, restaurants. It's a huge dream. It was big. And I just, but I went through a season where what people are seeing now, it was a lot of lonely nights, a lot of like, who did I think that I could come among the urban poor? And you want to talk about victimhood and coming against all of that. I mean, what was I thinking? So I can't, time will not allow for me to give it to you, but it was just a lot of I should have just take the missions job somewhere else, make my 6 figures, and travel like all the rest of the Americans do. And just talk about it every now and then when you talk about it. And, so I had, I don't know if people have tried this, but to go into and let's say you go in the inner city, south side of Chicago, and you're talking about marriage and family. You're coming up against sexual ethics. You're coming up against the music industry. You're coming up against all of these victimhood narratives that have been permeating these communities for generations. And that's what I did. I went up to the school and I was saying stuff. I've never seen a school get revitalized and you just skip over the family. I said, but I'll wait and watch. I'll see if it happens. Maybe you guys can figure it out. And superintendents will look at me like, who are you? Good thing you're 6'4", but And so, and so the rebirth, after just many times wanting to quit, it wasn't, people ask me now, I wanted to quit along the way, but Dion and I, he saw a lot of this. Every time I tried to quit, God wouldn't let me quit. I wanted to quit, and that Sunday or something, it would be something supernatural, something uncanny that would happen, and God would just let me know, you can't quit on this. And so, rebirth, we're seeing a baby boom in our church through married Black African-American women. We're probably producing more marriages in our little community, probably all the churches combined. All the ages between 20 to 32 years old. This is first time, I've never seen this, and I'm almost 60. We got a lot of stay-home Black moms. I don't know how it's happening, but a lot of them are staying home. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, and you come during the noon of the day, you'll see some of our members now walking through Fairfield, working out, pushing the baby strollers with their children in the stroller. And so, and that's, and that's been the rebirth. It's been all of that. And businesses coming in, grocery store, God is doing a lot. And a lot of people say, we've never seen that. Even people who do community development, one of the things that they say about what's happening, they say, we've never seen a church lead the way. It's always been something else. And I think we're in a season and time in the history, and I end here, where I think the church needs to take its rightful place and to begin to lead out in these conversations and not somewhere else.
Amen. Amen. So I want to open it up to questions, but I have one more that I've posed to the group, which is that, one of the things we talked today about with a group of educators who are going to be teaching a lot of this content in classrooms, many times we're with students whose families did not pursue some of the things that I think you're now committed to help more and more kids. And we want to be able to have these conversations without demonizing single mothers or to make kids feel bad about where they're from. Talk to us about that conversation where it's grounded in love, it's grounded in compassion for what we want young people to pursue and accomplish. We also don't want them to look back at their own life and say, gosh, this is horrible, Talk about that. How do you make this an empowering experience versus a blaming experience?
You wanna go ahead and take that one?
Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted by my daughter coming back in. Can you repeat the last part
That's
of
a
the
beautiful
question?
distraction. Yes.
Can you repeat the last part of the question?
Well, just this idea that a lot of young people are in tough situations today where they may hear this message, you've got agency, you can do whatever you want, and you have control. They're like, I don't know if I really do. Or they may feel bad, or they may feel that, I don't know, somehow ashamed or of where they're coming from. And we want these messages that we're imparting to be met with, okay, I understand where I'm from, but I know that my life can be different. So how does that message come without the shaming, without the persecution, without a way of not looking back, but looking forward?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we always focus on in general is vulnerability and being able to share our story, because we see that that's an opportunity to give people the courage to share theirs. Because I know growing up that all my neighbors and my friends can be going through the exact same trauma and other things that I'm going through, but we'll never know unless we talk about it. And there's so much shared community trauma that we don't even realize that's happening. And so everybody, I know at least my part, I felt incredibly alone growing up in my experiences, that I'm the only one in the world going through it. But now as an adult, knowing how common all the things are that I've gone through, or even now that people have read our book and have reached out and said, that they are now able to heal, or now able to talk to their husband about things, and like the person that's supposed to be the closest person in the world to them. And so to me, it's a lot of vulnerability and being able to have that courage to talk about it. And that's really how I've kind of approached it.
Yeah, I would say something very similar to that. I mean, as I was growing up in Fairfield, in an impoverished community without a father, experiencing abuse and all those things, I was trying to get away from that community with this idea that there's a better life out there in another community, or just following the American dream and pursuing the things that this world has to offer. And God brought me back to show me that I had a story to share with others who grew up in similar situations as myself. And so that vulnerability is important from those who have experienced those things, and finding people who are willing to share their stories, because you do have to go back in order to go forward, because there's a lot of healing that is a part of the process of going forward. And so you can't bury it and you can't suppress it. And a lot of times God will bring that to the surface so that he shows you that he created you and that no sin that has attacked you or victimized you can have power over you. Matter of fact, you can use that story as a story of freedom to liberate others. And so that is vitally important, to be able to recognize the past, recognize those pains, but recognize that that's the result of sin. And God is still, as even in the story of Lizette, how she was struggling because she was conceived in rape, but God formed her in the womb. And so she has value, and she has now a story that she can share with others who've come from that similar situation and give them hope. And so you have to have a people that are willing to go into the hard places and give hope. And the way that you do that is, going back to the previous question, the rebirth. I believe in the resurrection because of my faith. Because of the resurrection, I can die to myself in this life and live for a greater one. And therefore, it enables me to sacrifice things in this life, a plan of success materially and with resources and all that. It enables me to go back into a place that I was trying to run from, rather than chasing that, and give hope to others.
Very powerful. Thank you. So we are opening up for questions. And I know we have some courageous folk in the room. There you go.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, well, I mean, to me, the first three pillars seem like they're just things that are definitely good for everyone. But entrepreneurship feels a little different. Like, it feels like, for some people, it's actually bad for them. Like people that, just don't like that kind of chaos. Maybe they're dispositionally, they're going to be happier in a job with a lot of stability, and so. I mean, maybe that you disagree with that, and it's good for everybody, or is it that entrepreneurship fits differently with the other three pillars in some way? Wondering how you see that.
The last E in free, it really does come down to this idea. The first three pillars are in many ways the foundation. If you're on the pathway to form a strong family, if you have had a personal faith commitment, if you've benefited from a quality education, my experience is that has usually helped create someone who has this entrepreneurial mindset, which isn't necessarily about a job, or it can be, because you can be entrepreneurial even in a traditional work setting. But the idea is that you're a problem solver, that all of these the panelists here in video, all of them have faced extraordinary challenges. And it's this question of resiliency. What do you do in those situations, right? I often say that it's your decisions, not your conditions, that dictate what is possible in your own life. And so I like to think of entrepreneurship, the last E, in that spirit. So it's not so much about you having to start a company, because that's not the, I don't know if that's what you're pinpointing. That can be a component, but it's much more this idea that when inevitable challenges come your way, you've built a network of people that love you, that you have a moral framework through your faith, hopefully you've gotten a great education. All of those things now make you more able to deal with the uncertainty of life and unfortunately, the tragedies that we will all have to deal with. So that's entrepreneurship. All right.
First and foremost, thank you guys for sharing your story with us.
A mic is coming your way.
Thank you. Thank you guys for sharing your story. I want you to imagine for a second if 15-year-old you walk through those doors and could see you sitting on the stage now and hear your story. What do you think that younger version of yourself would be most proud of you for?
Great question.
That's a good question. I would say, for me, I mean, people talk about how hard, like being a parent is the most difficult thing you can do. But I think coming from my past has made it a bit more challenging because I actually never planned on being a mom. I didn't see that in my future. It's not something that I thought I wanted. And now that I am a mom, it's literally the greatest thing I've ever done and created. But that's not to say that the first year and a half of her life was, to me, one of my darkest periods of my life. Because I'm trying not to cry, but like I couldn't hold her when she cried. I couldn't even be in the house when she cried. And that was really hard to be able to work through that. Because I didn't have that, that love and tenderness and, softness. I didn't have that, so I didn't know how to give it to her. But a lot of counseling and therapy and healing got me through that. So I would definitely say so much of being a parent is actually about that digging deep and figuring out what it is that we need to work on and healing our inner child along the way. So that's what I would say.
I'm a father to a lot of fatherless men. I was reflecting on this the other day. So how did I end up being a father to a lot of young men and women around me when I didn't have it myself? So to the 15-year-old Alton, I was asking my wife, like, how did that happen to me? I didn't grow up with a dad. And I think I would be surprised. I would say to the 15-year-old Alton, why did it take me so long to finally come to the realization how much my Heavenly Father loved me? Because that was my deepest longing in life. That's what I was looking for. And that's what I would say. It took me a lot longer to come to that realization. And so with that came a lot of pain and suffering because I didn't know it. But now, coming back, I said, man, he's right there all along, but I didn't know that.
For me, I'd be most proud of having that woman right over there as my wife. And being a father to the children that she has given me, particularly because of not growing up with a father and growing up without married parents, and then going through the divorce. I didn't give up. And it's only by the grace of God that I tried marriage again, because I knew God, that marriage was a gift. Even though I experienced pain the first time, I knew that it was a part of God's plan for my life. And from that, I'm now a husband and a father and a leader in my church. And I had none of those realities growing up and modeled for me. And so I would be most proud to see that through sacrifice and through loss, I didn't give up. So that was what I'd be the most proud of, is I kept going by the grace of God.
Wow. Well, I think. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can answer.
Oh, right. I wasn't sure.
I'll be quick though.
No.
So it's a great question, by the way. Thank you for asking. And so much of that reminds me of like the story of Joseph. I've heard a pastor talk about this. If Joseph knew where he would be on the other side of everything, he would be excited. But if you showed him everything that, from the enslavement to the being in prison and everything, he'd probably be like, nah, I don't want to go through that I don't want to go through all that just to be on the other side. But 15-year-old me, I would be like just probably celebrating that I'm alive and just like not being mentally tormented anymore in foster care, and just going through so much suffering, and to be sitting on the stage next to my wife, who is like amazing, accomplished and everything, and just amazing and faith-filled, and to see my daughter, and I would be like probably crying and just like, I don't even know. It's so hard to think about that, because me and Alexis talk about it all the time, how these different pockets of our life is like completely different human beings. And like 15-year-old me is like an entirely different person as far as like the life and the structure. It's hard to imagine, but I'll be excited just to see like where I am right now, and so grateful to God, and my faith will probably increase even more. So yeah.
beautiful. I guess I have to answer myself, but you know, when I was 15, you know, I was very blessed. I have two married parents who were together for 48 years before my dad passed away, and I always felt very fortunate that they set a model for me in ways that I didn't always appreciate. You know, it's like you go to school, you come home, do your homework, you know, have dinner, go to bed, go to school, come home. You know, that was, they kind of created a cocoon around me, and I had no idea that I'd be doing the things I'm doing today. And I feel very blessed that I have the opportunity to hopefully, through my work, through all of our collective work, to touch hopefully the lives of millions of young people that may not be seeing the kind of future that they should. And we have the power to change that. That's what agency is all about. So thank you all for joining us. Please join me in thanking our stars, our protagonists,